Welcome to the Teaching Journeys podcast, hosted by Dave Roberts. Humanity possesses a unique skill, the ability to pass knowledge from one generation to the next. This podcast embraces that ability, offering learning opportunities through conversations with extraordinary guests. Dave aims to leave a positive mark on individuals around the world. So before you dive into today's episode, please share this podcast with your network, including friends, family, and colleagues. And please consider leaving a rating or review. Your support makes all the difference.
Hi, everyone, and welcome to another episode of the Teaching Journeys podcast. I'm your host, Dave Roberts, and today it is my pleasure to have as my guest R.J. Johnson. R.J. Johnson is a speaker, author, and redeemed son of God who is passionate about helping others discover that God is still in the miracle business. After serving 7 years of a 20-year prison sentence, R.J. encountered the relentless grace of Jesus, and everything changed. Through his journey of transformation, R.J. founded Not My Will Ministries, a 501c3 nonprofit committed to helping men both in prison and in society break free from destructive cycles and rediscover their identity, value, and purpose in Christ. His ministry leads powerful scripture-based cycle workshops that equip men to confront lies, build resilience, and walk in lasting freedom. R.J. is also the author of God Doesn't Waste a Thing, written under the pen name Luke Chance, an awe-inspiring memoir of the miracles he witnessed behind bars. His story challenges churches and communities to step outside their comfort zones and into God's mission field, even when that mission field has razor wire and locked gates. With transparency, intentionality, and a spirit of joy, R.J. brings a message of hope, redemption, and real-life faith. Whether he's speaking to a church, a podcast audience, or leadership circle, R.J.'s life proclaims one core truth. Your worst chapter does not have to be your last one, and God can use every broken piece to build something beautiful. R.J., welcome to the Teaching Journeys podcast. I've been looking forward to our conversation for quite a while now.
Thanks. Happy to be here. Thanks for the intro. It got a little long there. Maybe next time I'll make it more succinct, but you got through it, and I appreciate the kind words.
Well, you're quite welcome. And we have to give a shout out to Candace Snyder. Candace, I know you were on her podcast, Passion, Purpose, and Possibilities, and she excitedly emailed me and told me that she had a guest that she thought would be really great for the podcast. She introduced you and your backstory. We had a great conversation, and we find ourselves doing a podcast episode today. And Candace has always sent me some very impactful guest contributors. She's a great podcast host and a great friend and a great supporter of my podcast.
Yeah, agree with all that. She was amazing. Go check out her channel for sure.
Yeah, absolutely. She's had, in addition to you, she's had so many great guests, and she just does a great job. Her heart's in the right place, and she likes to feature individuals who have found their passions through their own challenges. So, RJ, let's get right down to it. The first question is, tell our audience about the major experiences that have shaped who you are today.
Experiences, plural, lends me to kind of go a little bit more broad. I'll start with the most impactful one, which was making the choice in 2012 to sexually assault a high school student and get sentenced to 20 years in prison, of which serving 7, like you mentioned, is where I came to know Christ, got to meet my best friends and mentors, and truly understand the redemptive and transformational power of what Jesus can, will, and continues to do in my life and in others around me and throughout society. And that's kind of become the pivotal point of what my journey is now about. Going back in, whether it's into a prison, into a rough conversation, into a church community, and helping men discover their, like it said in your intro, your worst chapter, your last chapter, your biggest and most heinous decision does not need to be the defining piece of what you do moving forward.
Absolutely. And we shouldn't be defined, the totality of our life shouldn't be defined by our worst act. It's how we transcend that and what we do after that. Tell us about how you thrived in the prison environment. I know that had to be challenging in and of itself. How did you thrive? And I know you found the miracle of God in prison. So maybe you can touch on that. And what else, in addition to that, helped you survive a very challenging environment?
Yeah, thrive is an interesting word choice. There was no goal of thriving for my first 16 to 18 months. It truly became surviving rather than thriving, to make it a cute phrase that rhymes. The first prison I went to, I made it about 3 days before my first murder attempt on my life. Got moved, hidden, tucked away in another prison, made it about 6 months there before round two of this particular gang trying to murder me and kill me once again. So I was at about 8 months in on a 20-year sentence. 240 months is how they actually sentence you. So it's even bigger, scarier number. Realizing the very hard truth of, I don't think thriving is a goal anymore. I need to find a way to just survive. And so, to kind of preface your question, how did I get to where I could thrive? That came by a couple miracles even before I knew the name of Jesus, and asking for a few things that I thought would be best for me, to go hide in protective custody, to go put myself in a segregated place for 20 years was not granted to me. Thank God. I would still be in there. I had a conversation with the prison system asking to go and be put in protective custody until 2032, Dave. And that would still be 6 years from now. So
Yeah.
thankfully, I didn't get in my way, as is consistent with the stories in the book. God usually used my ignorance and my hard-headedness when I was saying I know best for his no's to become maybes, to become his greatest yes. But to get to the point of where thriving began was when I came across a gentleman named Chaplain Matt, who took the time, took the interest to hear about what I was going through. He wasn't coddling. He wasn't just an ear of like, oh, that's so bad. I took responsibility for my choices. I took full accountability. I never minimized or justified any of my actions. But once we had crossed that conversation, it was, how do we now focus on what your identity in Christ is? Where is your value? Where is your purpose? What is your new purpose? And it's when that mind shift started to happen, when I began to focus on God first and the person in front of me second, like you right now, and it put me in the rightful third place.
Yeah.
That's when thriving began. I was able to see others as more important, see others as being the focal point of the day, the mission's journey, instead of, what can I get out of today for me to best put myself in the best situation?
Yeah. And I'll tell you what it sounds like is this individual looked beyond your behaviors and your actions and saw you as a person, saw you as a person with value. If I were on the receiving end of that, that's how I would have interpreted that. What's going to be your purpose? What's going to be your mission? How are you going to transcend this? Now that you've done this, now that you've owned this, what are you going to do moving forward? How are you going to begin to learn how to thrive in the face of those challenges?
Yeah, you're right, Dave. And it's interesting how going through that with him, and then with a guy named Chaplain Abner and Chaplain Troy, who's become one of my two best friends, and just continuing to see the common theme in them, which is truth and grace. It was all built on me not minimizing and rationalizing, like not going into a conversation of, how do I frame this or phrase this to where I come out looking good? The goal was to take full responsibility. So get rid of the words like only or just or kinda. No, this is what I did. I was the one who was in the position of trust. I chose to do these things. Once you kind of lay that down,
Yep.
it allows for real conversation, real vulnerability to happen. And unfortunately, I sat in a lot of therapy sessions with other men who weren't doing that. They lived in that victim mode. They lived where they're like, well, it shouldn't have been this much, or it couldn't have been that bad, or it was only this. Healing is really hindered, my friend, when there's a lot of justification still happening. When you think you're the person who's been harmed, versus the one who's caused the harm. It's a pretty big hurdle to get over.
Yeah, it's when you see yourself as a victim, it's hard to be accountable for anything.
Yeah, for sure. And that's what the fear behind a prison wall or in society. It's a pretty common theme that I deal with through the ministry when I go in and to churches and to communities and to men's groups and share the workshop that I've created, getting past a victim stance that the world is out to get you and that the world owes you something. That's a pretty big brick to the face that a lot of guys don't want to hear. Like, this is not poor you. Something's happened, probably because of your own choices. How do we take responsibility and move forward? I love that it says journey behind you. This is a journey, guys. And you got to go through some things to get to the other side. You don't just get to skip ahead.
Anything I think worth achieving, it requires effort, and it's going to require some struggle in the process. It's never a linear process. There's going to be ups, there's going to be downs, but we have to persevere. I think with faith that God or whoever a person believes our higher power is going to provide the resources necessary for them to get through that and trust that. But yeah, it's never easy, and it's anything worth achieving is always going to require a tremendous amount of effort.
Yeah, there is a quote it was by Jocko Willink called The Dichotomy of Leadership. And having read that book in prison, the line that just kept being reframed and rephrased and re-brought up throughout my last couple of years was there's no growth in the comfort zone.
No.
That's tough because the thing most people attempt to pursue is comfort, and guilty of it, going through things right now that are super uncomfortable. And I don't like it, but I know I've experienced enough things, as my buddy Troy always says, scoreboard. Like, there's a lot of evidence thrown on that scoreboard of amazing growth and amazing outcomes through uncomfortable situations.
Yep.
And does it mean I'm praying for a discomfort? Absolutely not. But trying to be more mature during them, that's a goal.
Yeah, and that's a sign of growth is the maturing through those tough times and being transparent with how we've grown. You mentioned that you do a workshop for men.
Yeah.
Talk a little bit more about that and how your experiences have shaped what you try to instill in the men that you work with.
I appreciate you giving me the platform to do that. There's some scripture in Romans 7, whether your audience is familiar with it or not. It's from Paul, and I call it the do-dos, where he basically sums it up and says, the things I want to do, I don't do. And the things I don't want to do, I keep doing. And the workshop is built around that because every single person has something that they either wish they could do: train more, eat better, love better, pray more, wake up early, be kinder, tithe, whatever. Or usually the more common one is they have something they wish they could stop doing: looking at porn, spending too much money, yelling at their kids, lying to their wife. So the workshop is built around sharing that scripture, that question, that what I call why to the audience. Like, what is your why? What is the thing at the end of every day, week, or month where you're sitting there, Dave, going, why do I keep doing this? That's the thing that the workshop I've created cannot just like help highlight for you. So you're like, well, yeah, duh, I know I do it. That's why I'm talking to you about it. I can eradicate that through the identity in Christ piece, the gospel, the power of the gospel, and from therapeutic skills that I've learned over the last, it's been now 8 years, combining those two things helps them eradicate that. By the end of this 2-day, 12-hour workshop, you will have the tools, the skills, the knowledge to stop doing the thing that you don't want to do anymore. It's transformational, it's empowering, and it's absolutely mind-blowing to be able to stand in this room of these men who are stepping into vulnerability and watching the first hour of them saying, I'm not going to tell you what I wrote down as my why. I'm too embarrassed. I'm too ashamed. Yeah, it's common. It's the number one lie that the devil says is don't tell anybody what this is. Everyone will leave you. About 3 hours in, people are sharing it and beginning to see that they're not alone. By the 10th, 11th, 12th hour, they've experienced the breakthrough. They've seen what God can do in those situations, and they no longer are held in bondage to it. They're in freedom from it.
Yeah, and I think once we can encounter the why, once we get to the root causes of why we do what we do, why we repeat the same patterns, and we can share that and be vulnerable in a place of other men, with women, or with other women, or in a mixed group, however that is constructed. If they could be vulnerable enough to share that this is the why and they get that support for that, it is empowering. And with the help of community, they can learn to take responsibility for themselves. And, I was going to mention earlier when you mentioned that a lot of the men that you saw in prison really refused or were incapable of taking responsibility for their actions, and they saw themselves in a victim mentality. I worked with individuals with substance use disorder for 27 years,
Wow.
and that was challenging in and of itself. But some of the kindest, some of the more creative, intelligent people I've ever worked with. And they taught me a lot about life. They taught me a lot about how to be a good therapist. When they were able to take full responsibility and accountability for their behavior, I had very little work to do other than provide resources, provide guidance, steer the ship when they were getting a little bit off course. But it was empowering to watch that and then them becoming accountable and sharing their whys. This is why I did what I did. But the most powerful thing, and I'm sure you've seen this with the men that you've worked with, is that they begin to share that with other individuals who come into the fold, where they begin to share, look, I tried doing it the way you did this. And I thought for a long time I had all the answers and it was going to work, but it didn't work. And this is where it got me. Now you can do what you need to want to do with that because every behavior has a consequence attached to that. But this is what I did. And I'm just letting you know, this did not work out for me.
Yeah. The gift of the ministry that I've come to with conversations of stakeholders and board members and just experiencing this is it's not really a salvation ministry. God shows off, and usually one or two people give their life to Christ throughout the workshop or the recurring stuff that we do and we train for. But it's to help create disciples, those who can go out and do and share the thing they've themselves experienced. Like you just said, people, when they have breakthrough, especially in something that's been so traumatic, so grip holding, so painful and recurring in their life, the thing where they're like, why is this the thing I can't get past?
Yep.
Well, when they finally get past it, they're the best people to go and share. It's not ever fun for me to just share so openly here 20 minutes into a conversation with you. We've talked an hour before, but hey, here's what I did. Like, that's not fun, but it's lending itself to giving honor, to being transparent, to being vulnerable so that the next guy can sit there and go, well, if he's willing to do that, then boy, oh boy, can I do it too. And oh, there's something that happens when you share the biggest secret. The lie goes away, the truth comes up. And that's the joy that I get of watching someone like for the first time share and be like, okay, no one left. That's good. And no one's throwing rocks. So that's good. And they're helping me along with it. And not only are they helping me, but you mentioned this and I actually forgot to, people are coming alongside of them. They're building a community. So not only was the lie that you're alone refuted, but you got an army here. And probably, if they're being honest, which most guys in the workshop, that's a requirement, they're going through the same thing. So you're actually normal that other people are walking through the same addiction to drugs, the same addiction to alcohol, the same addiction to porn, the same addiction to anger, but versus, and not disparaging AA, but it's not just coming together and being like, hey, we're accountable, we did this, but we'll do better next week. It's, we are coming together to help each other stop it. Not, hey, I messed up this week. That's all right, Dave. we're going to be better next week, so let's go give it a go. It's, Dave, we talked about this. You said that you are sick of doing this, and here's why you keep doing it. So what are some protective factors, I call them, that we can put in place? If you keep failing on Friday nights after work because you know that that baseball game is going to have that liquor and it's going to be that thing, quit going or take a buddy with you. Like, it's those kinds of things that we put in place to where there's healing and growth versus, well, at least we sucked a little bit less this week, but we did it together. And that
Yeah.
matters.
Yeah, typically those type of groups don't work out that well because they get caught in the really like touchy-feelies and just the comfort of each other, and there really isn't any hard truths that are being talked about. And in the best groups, the best groups are the most uncomfortable groups because everything comes out. And, it's just like, here's what you need to deal with. No, this wasn't acceptable. Let's talk about what happened. Doing good one week and not doing good the next week isn't acceptable. So let's talk about what happened to lead you up to the choice that you made. What can we do to avoid it again? And that's taking a proactive approach. And if you were looking at in an organization, in a business, the process isn't working, then you sit down with your team and say, okay, what do we need to do to tweak this? Why isn't it working? What can we do to modify it? The same with the missteps that we make. We look at our mistakes as opportunities to continue to grow, but we can't look at those as opportunities if everybody else is willing to say, okay, well, you'll do better next week. That's just sweeping it under the rug.
Yeah. My mentor, I mentioned him earlier, Chaplain Matt, when I first started creating this content, because one of my master's degrees before I got in trouble was in writing curriculum and instruction. So it's hilarious. The title of the book that we mentioned earlier is God Doesn't Waste a Thing. I got a master's degree just to make more money as a teacher. Never was I going to rewrite math. Math is math, and it hasn't changed. Not to go down that rabbit trail, but rewriting this content curriculum, he had mentioned, he's like, RJ, I am not in the business or in favor of you putting Band-Aids on addiction and bullet holes. Like, if you can find a way to eradicate it, that's something I'll get behind. But it's not enough to just be like, oh man, that's too bad. Let's put some gauze on that and let's just get back out there. Like, there has to be grace and there has to be like improvement. Like, God has thankfully like delivered me from having a pretty terrible mouth. When I was coaching, I used to drop all sorts of language that I thought would encourage and inspire. It was really just because I was young and I thought that's how it motivated people. But it took a hot minute. It wasn't day one I cussed and day two I didn't. It was less and less and less. And now it's like very rare that it happens. So there are Band-Aids, but it's not like, oh, just do better. God will forgive you. There is truth in there, but it has to be both truth and grace. And the goal is not touchy-feely, as you said. The goal is, let's be different. Period.
And you can present that to a person in a way where you can do it with grace. You can do it with dignity. You could do it in a way that they're going to save face as well, too, where you're not in your face confrontation, but you're saying, hey, this isn't acceptable.
Yeah.
Let's sit down and talk about this and let's together come up with a solution so we can avoid the same missteps again. Because a lot of times, individuals, particularly those that are anti-authority, if you try in-your-face confrontation, it's not going to work. Basically, they're just going to be like you're backing an animal into a corner. They're going to fight out of it. So you diffuse the defenses by offering collaboration and offering empowerment, and that this is the way it has to be. Because if somebody told me that this is the way something has to be, I tell them, no, it isn't. I mean, it can be the way I choose to define this, and it's just like, so basically when I've had to confront individuals about hard truths, it's doing it in a way that's going to be dignified. You're doing it in a way where at least they're going to listen to what I have to say.
Yeah, agreed. And it helps when they get to define their own truths too. Like, it's a lot better when Dave comes up with his own idea than me telling you the solution. When I can help walk them to their own solution, ask more questions. My buddy Choi always says, like, the best question is why, and the best follow-up is why. And the best follow-up to that is, Why?
Yeah.
It usually works out like, well, I had my feelings hurt. Why? Well, I didn't get my way. Why? Well, I was really needy and I wanted everything my way. Why? Like it becomes almost nuanced and annoying, but it works. So if you can just ask that question and then stop talking, it really does open up for them to get to their own solution.
Yeah. And why allows that to happen? It allows the story to come out. It allows them to develop their own insights. It allows them to take responsibility. You know, as they're talking, they're going to say, wait a minute, I'm seeing a pattern. And then the light bulb goes on, and then the rest of our work becomes steering the ship.
I appreciate you saying that earlier. Really good way to put it.
Yeah. Now, you mentioned your book. Let's talk about your book, God Doesn't Waste a Thing. And how did you come up with the pseudonym Luke Chance?
I feel like I'm mentioning my buddy Troy an awful lot. When I wrote this book, I had put down the names and locations of the gang members, the people who tried to hurt me, the actual prisons, all the specific details was in the original manuscript, I guess you'd call it. And the publisher was like, we can't publish this. We cannot write down that you're calling certain people Nazis and that they attempted to kill you. Like, they'll sue us. And so I didn't know what I didn't know at the time of like, that's actually ridiculous. In order for them to sue us, they'd have to, they themselves name themselves as Nazis, which any lawyer probably would be like, that's ridiculous.
Mm-hmm.
So it wasn't worth fighting at the time. And also through some prayer, I've heard God say, it's not about you anyways, but it's my story. So let's get your name off of it. So humbly, it was probably what was necessary, or I would have been really, really proud about having my name on something. But to answer your question, Luke Chance is the two sons' names of Chaplain Troy. So he's got 4 kids. He's about to have his 5th here in July. His 2 boys are Chance and Luke. And Luke Chance just kind of rolls off the tongue a little bit better. And so that was my little tip of the cap to Troy for volunteering to come into prison to talk to people that he didn't know about Jesus and to ask the question why, and to just love and to care and show joy. So it was really a cool way to say thank you to him. And I don't know, just, I think it's a pretty cool name.
I think it is too. Thank you for sharing the backstory with that. And I'm sure Reverend Troy is, and his kids are honored that you chose Luke Chance as your pen name.
Yeah, it was really fun. Chance is the older one, and he's definitely the more outspoken and leader of the two. Not that Luke isn't, but older brother kind of syndrome. And so when they flipped the names, it was a little cute way back then. I don't even know if they remember, because that's now almost 4 years now, and they're 10 and 8. Luke was like, heck yeah, my name's first. And Chance was like, wait, why is my name not first? It was almost kind of like I was the little brother. So part of me deep down, I could have named it Chance Luke, but Luke Chance kind of gives a little bit of a wink and a nod to the little brother, like, let's get you a little bit here first for the first time ever.
So the book itself, is it kind of like a memoir? What is the book about? If I picked up the book and started reading it, what would I get out of it? What would you want me to get out of it?
Yeah, the first 7 or 8 chapters would probably hold you pretty close, because that's where things kind of get real rough, real quick. That's where the murder attempts happen, and it's really scary. My mom actually struggled to get through the first bit of chapters. I'm like, Mom, spoiler alert, I'm out. Like, I lived. It's okay. The heart posture behind the book is each chapter, I think the longest chapter is like 4 pages. I wrote it in a manner to show that no matter what it is you're going through, whatever the experience is, the moment, the event, God's not going to waste it. So there's a lot of things in our life that we don't ask for, we don't want, and we sit in them and we go, even if you're not a believer, you're like, there's no way anything can be made good out of this. And then like society says, well, you can make lemonade out of lemons. Well, God chooses to do something even cooler. He will take the worst situation, the worst scenario, and he will turn it into one of the greatest testimonies, the greatest lift up. And so the book is broken down in each chapter about what is something that's happening And how is God going to use it, not waste it for the next thing and the next thing? And so to go way deep on this, hopefully you'll get it. Hopefully your readers will get it, just because it gives glory to God, not because it helps me in any way, shape, or form. But the reason I got out is because I was almost killed. And there's a whole lot of things in the middle there. And it wasn't seriously, Colorado was not like, oh, he's almost hurt, let's let him out. Far from that. They honestly couldn't have cared less for a very long time. It's all these things happen where I almost got hurt. I got thrown into a pit basically, and they hid me for a while. I grew a pretty long beard. The beard is the thing that they used to send me to another prison because they thought it was a disguise. When I got to that prison, I got to meet Christ. Eventually, I get sent to another prison against my will. And while I'm there, I get into therapy and a few other things begin to happen. To bring the title of the book in, God didn't waste a murder attempt because it's what grew a beard. God didn't waste a beard because it's what got them to move me to a facility where I met Christ. God didn't wait me in Christ because that's where I got to see miracles. So it's just taking at a granular level what is going on in the day-to-day 7 years that I can look back and go, and God didn't waste that. God didn't waste us meeting because it's bringing us to this conversation. Someone might listen to this and say, that's the story I need to read. I need to see that my story is not being wasted. It's not unique to me. I think it's unique because I took the time to stop and really go back and dive in and say, how did I get here? How did this all come to be? Instead of, well, I'm here now. I'm out and I just got married 18 months ago. So that's just what I'm going to deal with. Well, even that story, God didn't waste some pretty unique situations that led me to meeting my new bride. The stories never stop. It's just, do you choose to look at coincidence or God moments? That's the story of the book.
Yeah, it sounds fascinating. It sounds like a book that I'm going to need to add to my reading library very soon. It's a very compelling story. It's a very inspirational story in terms of how you transcended probably one of the more hostile environments known to humankind, and are sitting here talking about it. You're married. You're doing some amazing work to help other men, either who've been in prison or having their own challenges, trying to help them find a greater version of themselves. The longer time goes by, the more we can look back and say everything that happened in our past, good and bad, has dictated the choices that we're making now. And as I get older, RJ, the past continues to come up. And it's not because I have any unresolved issues with the past. It's just that as I grow, my past takes on new meaning. It means that I have to look at how the past relates to my current level of growth, how it can continue to spur my growth. So the past consistently has new meaning for me. Every time every year that I get older, the past kind of says, look, I'm here. You need to look at me again because you're at this point in your life now. Let's take a look at how we got there, because it's another subcategory that I need to address. And I'm okay with that, because who we are in the present is always determined by what we did in the past and the experiences we had in the past. So we can't deny that.
Yeah, I wish I could continue to be more and more aware in the moment. I have a picture you can't see here. I have two pictures in the room. I have a elephant behind me, which is funny because it's like the elephant in the room, which usually it reminds me to to share the thing that a lot of people don't want to share. But this one is train tracks and a train, which has two meanings. My dad drove trains his entire life, an engineer, and he's my hero. And other than Jesus, he's the guy I look up to and want to make proud every day. But also the train tracks was where I attempted to take my own life before I went and got locked up for 20 years. And I keep this in front of me because I didn't know God at the time when I laid on this train track. I didn't know that there was a lowercase g or a capital G, or there's a man named Jesus and that miracles could be done. And even that I was spared when I laid on the tracks. That's how the book starts. I didn't get up and go, oh my God, there's an amazing God and thank God. In the moment, I'm still often like, why is this happening? I don't want this to happen, but I can look at it and be thankful of the tracks, thankful of the moment. And real maturity, and I do see this, it comes quicker. It used to be years that I'd be sitting in there pouting. Why is this still going on? Why am I being threatened? Why does this feel uncomfortable? Then it became months, and then it became weeks, and now thankfully it can become days or hours on certain things.
Yeah.
And the train kind of reminds you that, like, you don't know what you think may kill you might be the first big miracle of your life and become the most impactful part of your story. What you think is being hurtful is being lifted up to be your greatest testimony. And there's scripture in there of where Joseph says to his brothers after they threw him in a pit and then they sold him into slavery, and he gets lied about and gets put in jail. And he eventually says, like, what y'all intended for evil is what God was using for good. That's this picture. That's this book. What so often we think is terrible, Dave, this is the worst thing ever, is going to be the thing that probably creates some of the most joy and impactful moments. I don't know you that well, but I'm guessing you didn't just wake up one day like, I should do a podcast that talks about this stuff that helps people with their journey. I'm guessing if you go back at some point, you'll be like, yeah, I was probably born out of pain or trauma or an experience or something where you're like, I don't think I'd want to do it again, but here's some of the blessings and the goodness that has come from it, would be my guess.
Yeah, I mean, the podcast is an extension of many activities that I've engaged in as a result of my own personal challenges, as a result of my desire to be of service and to feature stories like yours in the hope that my listeners are going to benefit from that. So, and that's basically what has driven me to do this. So everything is connected to what's happened to me in my past. The podcast, any writings that I did previously, any other decisions that I made to do speaking engagements, it was all connected to past trauma, to my desire with support, with encouragement, to transcend that and to, like yourself, try to make a difference and make an impact to happen to come into my path as you're doing. So thank you again for sharing this platform with me and for your trust in me with your story. So, but we're not done yet.
Okay.
We're not done yet. I got a couple other questions for you. The Not My Will Ministries. I know you alluded to that. Talk a little bit more about that. It's a 501c3. So tell us about the absolute mission of the Not My Will Ministries and the services that you provide to the men who request them.
Yeah. We believe that every man deserves to live with hope, joy, and purpose that can only come from a relationship with Christ. We do this by going both into prison and into churches, communities, men's groups, and showing up and helping build a relationship with each other with the focus of these four things, like showing up, asking questions, listening with transparency and listening with a kind heart, and then showing up again. And the gift is they get to not just experience the things I mentioned earlier, but they get to start seeing that this is how you disciple, this is how you love, this is how you be there for one another. And that is something that was kind of missing in a lot of the ministries that I saw when I was inside and even in community. Like, it's not enough to just show up and talk at me for an hour or an hour and a half, but do you want to talk with me? Do you want to listen to me? Because that's where the relationship's going to happen. That's where transformation and growth and discipleship happens. And the names, well, that's just one of my most challenging scriptures. When I was just giving my life to Christ and in prison, I remember saying, like, God, I'll do anything you call me to do, whether it's easy, medium, or hard. Not my will, but your will be done. Like when Jesus was in the Garden of Gethsemane. Well, it didn't backfire, but it's gotten more difficult because when he first called me to Christ, a lot of the stuff was easy. Go and pray with Dave. Go and see that guy over there and talk to him how his day's going. The more mature you get, the harder the asks, the harder the obedience, though. Can you get on a podcast and share your crime? Can you stand on a platform that has 5,000 people on a stage and talk about what you did? Can you go and forgive the person who tried to kill you? That happens through obedience and relationship. And really long answer. That's not the whole mission. It's a little bit more of the vision, but just showing up for these guys and letting them know that they're not alone and that it's okay to be uncomfortable for a while.
I want to ask you this question. As far as you mentioned forgiveness of the person who tried to kill you, can I ask where you are with that? Okay, so
Oh, I write chapter 40 in the book. One of the, it's always an interesting, kind of gets a little emotional because there's in prison, without getting too much into the political side. When you hear politics in the community, it's Republican, Democrat, and all that nonsense. But in prison, when you hear politics or political, it's gangs, Bloods, Crips, Nazis, Sureños, Paisas, GKIs, etc. The political world has a hierarchy where there's shot callers who make the majority of the calls. And then they got their little torpedoes, their minions, their little followers. One of the higher up people who had made the decision that it was okay for me to be killed for what I had done in my crime ended up being at the same prison that I was at. And so after hearing about who he was and having a relationship and kind of becoming the man that I wanted to be, I've done some of the easy things. I started doing some of the medium things. This was the first time that God called me to do a hard thing, which was go and talk to him about God. Go and talk to him about my relationship with God. Not necessarily forgive him right away, but just go. Go over there and talk to him. I did that while I was in prison, and that eventually formed a relationship where I let him know of his choices in his past and what it caused me. But instead of being angry about it, my man, it's what kind of set me up to get moved around this prison system to where I got to know Christ and I'm good. I forgive you. I love you. And we had become pretty close. There's a letter that he actually wrote to me that's published in the book. Because when I went to write this book, I wanted to make sure that I had his blessing to use this story. Because if he's still repping the gang and doing things that can get him hurt, I don't want to be the reason they're like, hey, is this you that was going over and talking to a sex offender?
Yeah.
Now we got consequences for you. So I wanted to make sure to honor him. And the letter that he wrote back is in the book of how he responded. And also he uses the phrase, I have my book over here. I don't know the chapter fast enough to read it word for word, but he says, as I give our testimony, I often share that conversation. And since leaving that prison, he's still in prison, but leaving that particular prison, I've given my life to Christ, which that's about as cool as it gets, I think.
Yeah, it is. And forgiveness is always a process, but I think the fact that you were able to get there, you were able to talk to him about Christ and you were able to talk about his actions and in a sense, his trying to have you killed directly or indirectly help you find Christ because like you said, it helped you move around other prisons. You found Christ, you found peace, and you found, you found your purpose. And if he hadn't tried to do that, try to kill you, that might not have happened. It's hard sometimes to see a gift and almost getting killed, but your story might be a good one in terms of this gift helped me find my true calling.
God doesn't waste a thing, man. It is referenced multiple times. Like, had that not happened, I wouldn't have went and gotten into a position where the beard came from, and then I get moved. Yeah. Like, it truly was and there was something that spurred on the murder attempt. There was an article published about me because of something else. And you're kind of seeing the idea. I've just had the ability, and it took me, I didn't even start thinking about this book. I didn't have the knowledge, the wherewithal, the maturity, the level of thinking to step back in the prison to go, man, I wouldn't be here if that. And I was just in survival mode, like we talked about. Like, I just got to get to tomorrow, man. Yeah. I can't get beat up or killed today. I got to just get to this. And eventually that shifted to, I don't feel like I'm going to get hurt, but you're always aware. Like, prison can get real quick. And so it was like, how do I focus on loving Jesus and the person in front of me while not getting hurt? It wasn't until I got out and people started asking me to go to speak and share and kind of get in front of churches that the phrase, God doesn't waste a thing, just came out. That came out before I wrote the book. And as I was sharing this, people are like, you should probably write a book. And I'm like, I'd never thought of it. So then I kind of got back. Like the thing that I wrote the book with was just sticky notes, man. Every chapter is just a different sticky note of a different memory of a different thing that set up the next thing. And that's become kind of the gift of, I don't ever memorize. I don't have any notes when I go speak on a stage or go and do anything or a podcast. I don't prepare anything because I lived it. So wherever you ask me a question, I'll just go there. That's what gives God the most glory. Because if I start preparing things, I promise you one thing is going to be the goal. How do I tell stories that make me look the best? And I don't want to do that. I want to tell stories that make God look the best. And if it happens to be an embarrassing one or a shameful one or a scary one, then I guess we're going there today.
I mean, the things that happen to us in life aren't pretty, always pretty. And I don't believe we came into this life to sugarcoat anything about our experiences. It's like, this is who we are, the yin and the yang. This is the good. This is the not so good. This is who made me. This is what made me who I am. If you're uncomfortable with that, well, find a community of other individuals that will align with your philosophy. If you're comfortable with looking at the good, bad, and the ugly, then I'm your person. And then I'm in it, and we can have a conversation, and we can talk about a lot of different things. I tell people now I don't hang around with happy people, and I want to justify that. I mean, I hang around with people who experience joy, but not to the expense of disowning the other emotions that aren't joyful, because the sadness, the anger, the fear, all of that has something to teach us. All of that makes us who we are. It isn't just the happy moments, it's the not so happy moments. And I mean, I could sit down with you any day. And if you're having a not so good day, I'm not going to run away from that. I want to sit down and talk about it. Let's just say, or listen. I'll just sit there and listen to you and say, tell me about your not so good day. So I have a couple of more questions for you before we conclude today. My first question, if you could construct the perfect day for yourself, not for anybody else, but just for yourself, what would your perfect day look like?
Wake up and go for a walk with my wife and my dog, grab a coffee, have the ability to go play a round of golf with my dad and two other great friends, probably Troy, and I don't know, get someone else in there. That's going to be a whole lot of fun. Go get a workout in where I could sweat, get a little bit stronger, try to always make sure that I'm doing something that's hard. Get back together with a whole lot of people where we could go fellowship, men's groups and their wives. We have a pretty great, robust group that my wife and I get a fellowship with where we just kind of go and do life. So go and do that, whether there's cornhole and steaks and more coffee probably, because I'm a little bit addicted to that. And then finish the night with a really long walk. Our dog walks a whole lot better at night. She just behaves so much better when the darkness comes around. So in there with a walk with her and some prayer. And I know that sounds like super calm, but I've been through some hard things, and calm and boring is pretty great right now. So prayer, walk, coffee, dog, golf, friend, wife. I'll call that a pretty sweet day.
And I would too. And I've asked this question recently to a few of my guest contributors, and it's like it's just the little things that construct the perfect day. It isn't how much money they made for that particular day, who they may have impacted that particular day. It was just the little things that brought them joy. We spend a lot of our time in service, taking care of other people, being a part of their energies. And we kind of need to sit back and say, what do we need to do for ourselves? And what does that perfect day like where we can just be good to ourselves? So thank you for sharing that.
Yeah, happy to. And I think I found the fourth as I was even sitting there. My other best friend, you said if I can construct my perfect day. So if we're going out of reality a little bit, he's still in prison for life without parole for murder. He'd be the fourth. He'd probably be terrible, which would be hilarious, but that would mean that he's out of prison, and that would be a pretty perfect day too.
You've left our audience with so much good stuff, so much of yourself in this podcast. But if you could leave our audience with just one ultimate teaching, one thing you want them to remember from our conversation today, what would that be?
The pain you're sitting in, the shame you're sitting in, the confusion you're sitting in, the bad choice or behavior that you're sitting in doesn't need to be your resting spot or your final spot. It could be the catalyst to go and make the change that's necessary to live out the life that you want. To get to the question you just asked, what would you like your best day to be? I'm guessing everybody who's hearing that gets to think of their own. None of it would involve their pain, their shame, their chaos, their tragedy, their trauma. So don't settle in it. Deal with it, talk about it, and seek out the truth, which is found in the gospel of Jesus, and go for the life that you want to live.
Thank you for that, RJ. And my final question, people want to get in touch with you, find out more about Not My Will Ministries, contract for your services, purchase your book. What's the best way for them to do that?
All through the website, Not My Will Ministries, Ministries. I'm sure you'll add it in the notes.com. And it has my email. It has our P.O. box, which that'd be hilarious. If someone wants to write a letter, that'd be great. You can email me, but I'd be happy to come. I'd love to come and talk to a men's group, to a church, to share my testimony. There's a link to the book, whether through the publisher or on Amazon. And basically, if there's just any inquiries or questions, reach out to me individually, and I'll answer, I'll engage, and I'll hopefully have an opportunity to do something similar like this with other fans of your podcast.
RJ, thank you so much for just a very wonderful, transparent, authentic conversation today. I truly enjoyed it, and hopefully we can do this again in the future sometime.
Yeah, did not have a bad moment with you. So if there's a follow-up, if you feel like your audience registered with this or you have more questions, I'm happy to re-engage, bro. This was good and something that makes my heart happy because I get to talk about the thing that I love. So.
All right. You got it.
All right.
And with that, that's a wrap on another episode of the Teaching Journeys podcast. I am your host, Dave Roberts, wishing you peace.